Hello, Alan.
Good morning, Miss Letty. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Yes.
Now we must get on and start chapter 3, because otherwise we're never going to finish the story of the Christmas Carol or Scrooge.
Yes.
So quickly, we're going to move on and start. Would you like to read, please?
Let me just move photograph to one side. Yes. Scrooge is a mean old man with no friends or family to love him. He's just so miserable and bitter. One freezing cold Christmas Eve, 3 ghosts paid Scrooge a visit, and an eerie nighttime journey begins. The Christmas spirits are here to show Scrooge the error of his nasty ways. By visiting his past, present, and future, will Scrooge learn to love Christmas and the others around him? We will have to wait and see.
Now, at the bottom,
And at the
it
bottom,
says,
all human beings have the opportunity to behave in kinder ways towards each other.
now, I think it's a good story for us to reflect on our personal life, because since I have started reading this story with you, I have been thinking about my own life. So even though it's written in the 1800s, this story, I think it could be related to our everyday life now.
Yes.
So here we go. I'm going to start. Are we ready?
Right.
Now, our viewers may realize that I have gone back a few slides just so we get the idea of the plot. When the clock struck 11, the dancing ended. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig stood by the door, shaking hands with each person as he or she went on, and wishing him or her a Merry Christmas. During this time, Scrooge had thought of nothing except what was happening in front of his eyes. He remembered and enjoyed it all with the greatest delight. But when the dancing came to an end, he realized that the ghost was looking at him. The light on the spirit's head was burning very clearly. "It seems easy enough to amuse these childish people," said the ghost. "It was nothing much that Fezziwig did, was it? After all, he only spent a few pounds on food and drink and paying the fiddler." So if we remember from our last time we were together, the fiddler is like a small violin, and we use it to play at parties. Right, your turn.
"It isn't a question of money," replied Scrooge warmly. He was speaking like the young man he used to be, not the old man he was now. "No, Spirit, you see, our employer can make us happy or sad. His words, his looks, all these things are so important. The happiness that he gives is just as valuable as money." He suddenly stopped speaking when he felt the spirit watching him closely. "What's the matter?" asked the ghost. Nothing," said Scrooge, just like that. "I'd like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk now." Now Scrooge could see himself again. He was older now, and it was clear that he was beginning to show an unhealthy interest in money. His eyes were restless and...
Right. For our viewers, I would like to mention clerk. Clerk is a person that works in the office. And depending what kind of clerk he is, he could be a bank clerk, an office clerk. So that's what it means, a clerk. So now he's seeing the beginning of his interest in money. His eyes were restless and his mouth looked thin and mean. He was not alone, but was sitting beside a lovely young girl. The light that shone brightly from the ghost of Christmas past showed that she was crying. I know it doesn't matter very much to you, she said softly. You care about gold more than you care about me. Perhaps I shouldn't be sad. Money will give you the happiness that I wanted to give you. But I haven't changed towards you, have I? So these few slides are making me think. As an employer, I have 5 teachers who are my staff. So maybe I should be kinder and better with them in the future, or think about it at least, no?
You have changed. We promised to marry a long time ago when we were both poor and happy to be poor. I have stayed the same, but you have different hopes and dreams now. I love the man that you used to be, but I know that you do not wish to marry me anymore. So I've come to tell you that you're free. Be happy in life that you've chosen. And she left him. Spirit, cried Scrooge, show me no more. Take me home. This is too painful.
Yes, sometimes it's hard to look at our faults and see the reflection in the mirror of the things that are not so nice about us, no? But it's good to see our good points and our bad points, no?
Yes.
One shadow more, said the ghost. No more, cried Scrooge. I don't wish to see any more. But the spirit held his arm, and he could not escape. Now they were in another place, in a room which was not very large, but comfortable. Near the fire sat a beautiful young girl. Scrooge thought she was the girl that he had just seen, until he saw her, now a good-looking married lady, sitting opposite her daughter. The room was full of children and noise and shouting and laughing. Just then the door opened, and the father entered carrying a great pile of Christmas presents.
The noise became twice as loud as the children received their presents with delight and kissed their father gratefully. Finally, the younger ones went upstairs to bed, and Scrooge watched more sadly than ever as the father sat down with his loving daughter and her mother by the fire. Belle, said the husband, turning to his wife with a smile, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Guess who? Mr. Scrooge. He was sitting alone in his office. His partner is dying, and I don't think he has any other friends. Spirit, said Scrooge in a broken voice, take me away from this place.
So he doesn't like what he sees.
No, that's right.
So here in this picture, we see the father with a pile of presents. A pile is things one on top of the other, right? A pile of presents. And we can see the happy faces of the children looking at the presents more than the father, I think. And here we see 2 ladies sitting watching. Now, this is a typical living room, no? With a fireplace, the pictures on the wall. So it's the way it was in those times, no? These are the shadow of the things that happened in the past, said the ghost. You chose the life you preferred, so why cry now? I can't watch anymore. It's too awful. Leave me alone, spirit. And Scrooge, noticing that the ghostly light was burning high and bright, suddenly took the extinguisher and pushed it down hard on the spirit's head. But although it covered the ghost's head and body, Scrooge could not hide the light, which continued to shine out strongly from underneath. Now Scrooge found himself back in his old bedroom again. Feeling very tired, he climbed into bed and at once fell into a deep, heavy sleep. Now, extinguisher is anything that puts out a light or a fire. So now in modern days, we have like a red cylinder with the end to put out a fire. It's called a fire extinguisher. But at this time, it was for maybe a candle. So it was like a triangle hat that you put on top of the flame to put out the candle. So depending on the historical moment, it will either be a modern extinguisher or an old-fashioned one. Off you go.
When Scrooge woke up, he realised immediately that the church clock was just going to strike 1. He felt sure that the second spirit would soon visit him. This time he wanted to be ready, so he pulled back all the curtains round his bed himself and lay there waiting. At 1 o'clock, instead of a spirit, a strong light shone down on Scrooge's bed. He felt very frightened. After a few minutes, he thought that perhaps the light was coming from the next room. So he got up and went to the door. When he touched it, a strange voice called his name and asked him to enter. He obeyed.
Right. So if you obey, you do what someone asks you to do, right? To obey. Normally, this would have been our parents when we were children. Yes. When they asked us to go to bed, we obeyed, or we didn't obey to go to bed, depending how we felt at the moment, to obey. Although he recognized it as his own room, it looked very different now. The walls were covered with bright green leaves, and there was a good fire burning in the fireplace. On the floor were big piles of the best Christmas food. Wonderful, rich, dark cakes, warm, soft bread, colourful apples and oranges, plates of yellow butter, cooked chickens, boxes of chocolates, and sugared sweets. Sitting beside all of this was a large smiling spirit who called out cheerfully to Scrooge, come in, man. Now, let's see, Alan, can you remember when you were a child? Did they used to buy any special food that you can remember?
Mince-pies, of course, was the number one. And of course, there was always a traditional Christmas cake, the kind of cake that you only eat at Christmas time, but no other part of the year.
Right. Was it full of sultanas and currant?
Oh, yeah, very rich fruit cake, sultanas, nuts, raisins. Obviously, there'd be a little bit of alcohol in the mix. Brandy, I think, was the alcohol. And it was a very heavy kind of mix, but very filling. In fact, I've got some right now, which I've been given from Christmas.
Oh. Right. So, our viewers will maybe understand plum cake, just to understand a little bit what the cake like. But this one was full of alcohol, either cognac or brandy. We would put in during the months before.
Yes, cognac, yes.
Yes. So I remember Christmas as a child at my grandfather's house. We used to have tangerines, which we didn't have all year round.
That's right.
Or we used to have dates.
Yes.
Or what was something else we used to have? We used to have a few things like that, which was extra that we didn't have. So it was like a tangerine, dates, and Brazilian nuts, maybe.
Brazil nuts, yes. But also the Christmas puddings were also similar to the cake mix. and they would put in a silver sixpence. You wouldn't be allowed to do that these days for health and safety, but in case you swallowed it. But we ought to look out for the silver sixpence in our bowl when we were given a portion of the Christmas pudding.
So it was like a game. See who found the coin in the, and I wonder what it meant. Maybe it would be good luck, no? For the
Possibly,
person.
yes.
Right. The ghost of Christmas present. Look at me. Since the first ghost visit, Scrooge no longer very sure of himself. So although the spirit's eyes were clear and kind, Scrooge was afraid to look straight into its face. But he could see that its body was dressed in a long green robe, and its long brown hair fell freely down its back, and its face wore a warm, friendly smile. Light shone from the torch which it was holding and its strong right hand. So a robe is a long tunic, just in case anyone doesn't remember. Robe, a long tunic, a piece of clothing. Right, off you go.
Spirit, said Scrooge quietly, take me where you want. Last night I learned a lesson which is working now. If you have anything to teach me tonight, let me learn it from you. Touch my robe, said the spirit, and Scrooge obeyed. The food, the room, the fire all disappeared, and they were standing outside in the cold, snowy streets on Christmas morning. Although the sky was grey and the streets were dirty, the people looked surprisingly cheerful as they hurried to the bakers' shops with their Christmas dinners all ready for cooking. The spirit seemed specially interested in poor people. He stood with Scrooge in a baker's doorway and held his torch over the dinners as they were carried past him. Sometimes, when he saw people pushing each other or getting angry, he lifted his torch over their heads, and immediately they became kinder or stopped arguing. Because it's Christmas, they told each other. What does your torch do? Spirit asked Scrooge. It gives a special taste to people's dinner on this day, answered the spirit.
So, here in this picture, we can see what happened a few slides before. This is the ghost, and he's full of greenery and all the food on the floor that we talked about before. Why do you use it most on poor people? Said Scrooge. Because poor people need it most, was the reply. They went on through London and came to the small house where Scrooge's clerk lived. Here the spirit smiled and held his torch high over the door. Inside, Bob Cratchit's wife and second daughter Belinda, in their everyday dresses, but looking clean and pretty, were putting plates on the table for their Christmas dinner. Bob's son Peter was helping to cook the potatoes, and two smaller gadgets, a boy and a girl, were running round excitedly. Just then, the eldest daughter, Martha, arrived home from work.
Here's Martha, Mother cried, the two young Cratchits happily. We're having a really big chicken for dinner, Martha. In fact, it was only a small chicken, but it seemed large to the excited children. My dear, how late you are, said Mrs. Cratchit, kissing her daughter several times. We were so busy yesterday, Mother, replied the girl. That's why we didn't finish until this morning. Well, never mind now, you're here. God bless you. Sit down by the fire, my dear. No, no, father's coming, cried the two young Cratchits. Hide, Martha, hide. So Martha hid herself, and in came Bob in his thick coat and long white scarf, with his son, Tiny Tim, in his arms. Poor Tiny Tim, he had not walked since he was born, and although he could pull himself and his thin little legs.
Right. Hide. So if you hide, we can't see you. To hide. So Martha hid herself so to give her father a surprise. So Tiny Tim has a problem with his legs and he can't walk very well.
Right.
Along with the help of a wooden crutch, he was not strong enough to travel far along. So a crutch is something wooden, and it has like this on the top, which would you put under your arm to help you walk like this. So a crutch. So a crutch is made from wood normally. Maybe in modern times it could be metal, and you would put it under your arm to support you, to help you walk. Why, where's Martha? Cried Bob, looking round. Not coming, said Mrs. Gadget. Not coming, replied Bob, his cheerful smile disappearing. Not coming on Christmas Day. But Martha didn't like to worry her father for a minute. So she ran out from behind the door and kissed him, while the two young Gadgets showed Tiny Tim the chicken now ready to eat. Scrooge and the spirit watched as the family sat down to eat. It was a poor enough meal, but for them it seemed. Now here we can see a picture of what is supposed to be the living room. And they're looking all very happy, sat round the table. Right, off you go.
Something wonderful, and they ate every bit of it. It's the best chicken I've ever tasted, said Bob, smiling round at his family, who, with their mouths full, all agreed. And then the most exciting moment of the day. Belinda put a clean plate in front of each person, and they all turned to look at Mrs. Cratchit as she came in from the kitchen. Her face was hot from the morning's work, but she was smiling happily as she carried in the Christmas pudding in its little circle of blue fire. Oh, it was a wonderful pudding. They were all delighted with it. It's your greatest success in all the years that we've been married
together. Right, so here we mentioned the Christmas pudding, which is very typical in the UK. And normally most households have a Christmas pudding, but now they buy it from the supermarket. But when I was a child, we used to help our mother make it in a big bowl. And we used to make it about 3 months in advance or something like that.
Yeah.
And we would all stir it and mix it with the fruit.
Make a wish.
And make a wish while we're stirring.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, you and I are remembering our childhood now. And then my mother used to put the mixture well away with some cognac in. And my mother used to take out the mixture, I think about once a week or so, and put a little bit more cognac in it, or brandy, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. So by the time Christmas Day came, I think the Christmas pudding was drunk with so much cognac. And then to set it afire, it didn't take a lot to set it afire because it was full of alcohol.
Yes.
and the alcohol was there to preserve the cake mixture. And my mother was cooked the cake mixture for about 2 hours in a steamer. In a steamer. And then it was ready. So you would only need a small slice of Christmas pudding because it was very heavy and it was full of alcohol. So that brings back memories. And you said you used to put a sixpence in it as well. So that's another one. So we made a wish when we were stirring the bowl. And also maybe the coin was to bring more good luck. We're always looking for good luck. It's your greatest success in all the years that we've been married, my dear, said Bob. Well, I did wonder how much fruit to put in it, said his wife, but yes, it's a good one. And she laughed just like a young girl. Nobody said that it was a very small pudding for a large family. Nobody even thought it. No gadget ever said or thought things like that. So here, he wants to express, the writer, how grateful people are, even with small things. And we should be grateful for being together, enjoying things together, and not in the quantity of what we have. At last, when they had finished their meal, the children cleared the table and washed the plates. Then they all sat round the fire eating apples and oranges. I imagine at that time they could be expensive, the oranges. So maybe we take oranges now for granted, but at that time they would be maybe a little of a luxury. There was a large bowl of fruit and sugar and hot water and something a little stronger, but only 3 people could drink at the same time because the family only owned 2 glasses and a cup. But this did not worry the Gadgets at all. Now Bob lifted his glass and said, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us." So we're going to leave it for there at the moment, Alan.
Yeah.
And we have to get back together soon because our viewers will want to know the next part of the story. Yeah. So let's say goodbye for now, and I will see you again.
Okay, fine. Okay.